It is Thursday, coffee and coaches conference call. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and Dr. Mike, it is perfect. I am killing it on the Neuro Coffee. I'm telling you,
I believe it.
there's
I
nothing.
think I think the internet is killing it on your impersonations of you, killing it with Neuro Coffee.
Have you seen some of those?
I love it.
Well, I will stop socializing, and well, actually, we can continue to socialize as much as we want because we can do anything we want on this call. So if you got any questions, comments, gripes, complaints, fire away. Anything that you want to talk about, Nikki?
I do have a question.
I saw it. I saw you. You were checking your notes.
I was.
Fire
So
away. Start us off.
I've been listening to your podcast with you in
You
mind.
and 3 other people. That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Actually, it's very helpful, very insightful. So I'm doing a lot more traveling, and I picked up on your podcast, and I was listening to, I think it was 10 when you were talking about client relationships. And you mentioned something about making not personifying the pain in somebody when you're dealing with them. Can you expand on that a little bit more and like how you avoid that?
Well, so here's the number one mistake that a lot of therapists make is they make the situation and the interaction about pain. I can do absolutely nothing about it. Literally, I can do nothing about it. Now, my intent would be to help them alleviate it, right? But it's not my decision. And in fact, it's not their decision. Okay? So I don't talk about it too much. And Campo is on the call, and he was a Padawan at one point in time. And so he knows what I say to people when they walk in the door. And I always say things like, what's your status? Right? And so I never say, how is your pain or how is the pain? Because the minute you give them that becomes the point of importance. And if I can't impact that, I just made it the most important thing. And now I'm already behind the 8 ball, right? I put myself in a bad position because now if we don't alleviate it, I'm the bad guy or I'm the guy that can't help them, right? So my goal when they come in is focus on the things that I know that they have control over. So it's like, hey, how did you do with your homework? So I give them exercises to do at home. We call it homework. And I say, how'd you do with your homework? So now the focus is on execution, right? So these are the things that you can do. These are the things that you can control. And so that becomes all of the focus. Because like I said, like right now, Nikki, I don't know if you recognize this fact, you do not control your health. People like to think that they do because we do things that we do that make us feel good or we think that contribute to our health. And there are many things that we do know that do contribute to our health, okay? But ultimately, we never do, right? Because there's so many factors involved in what we would consider health, right? So again, my goal with all of that, with that concept, is to take that off the table as a useful measure of the interaction. Of course, I want them to feel good. Of course, I don't want them to be in pain. But if I make that any measure of focus, you have immediately failed because now that is the one thing that they will be focused on as, you know, and then they start to blame themselves, or they'll blame me, or if it's a situation with you, they'll blame you, right? And we don't want to put ourselves in that situation because it's so difficult to be successful under those circumstances. Because if they don't walk out without pain, then you fail. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. How does your tactic change if there is somebody who has already identified themselves with pain through multiple, like they've gone through the doctors, the physical therapist, and they come to you and they're already there? Does your tactic change?
I'm not the first guy ever. I'm the last guy, hopefully. You know, I'm like 5 or 6 down the line. Does it change? No. It's harder sometimes because you have to pull their focus away from it because everybody else has done that to them.
Right.
The doctors, unfortunately, spend a lot of time talking about it, and then they ask questions like, "How is your pain?" They just gave them ownership of it, right? So now it's my responsibility to alleviate my pain, and I don't know what to do, or I can't do it. It's like, ugh, right? So again, you've created this situation that is almost unwinnable. If you take that off the table, so it's nobody ever walks. They never walk in the door and they go, "Hey, how's your happiness?" You know, nobody ever asks you that, right? But it's the same thing. Happiness is an output. It's a decision that is made based on the environment and the context, etc. Pain is the same thing. The only reason that pain, I love saying this, it's like the only reason that pain gets all the attention is just because it's unpleasant, right?
Right.
Like it's kind of like the relative that you have to see like once a year that you have to spend time with. It's just unpleasant, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's why it gets attention. It's like, because again, they talk about pain science, which is kind of silly. You know, if you've ever heard Naval Ravikant talk, he says if you have to add the word science to something, it's probably not a real science. But nobody talks about the happiness science. Like they talk about pain science, because again, pain is this uncomfortable, undesirable feeling. We don't have the same approach to good things, right? So again, I just try to get people away from it as quickly as possible and get them to focus on those things. It's the same thing happens in weight loss, Nikki. You get people focused on their weight, right? And while we do obviously need markers, but if it becomes the weight and not the behaviors, then you start to fail. There's a lead measure and a lag measure, right? And so weight is a lag measure. The weight is the outcome of the behaviors that came before that. And so the thing that we need to focus on in that situation is, okay, did you prepare your meals as you were supposed to? Check that one off the list. Okay, did you eat them when you were supposed to? Did you get your workouts in like you were supposed to? Did you get your sleep? Are you drinking your water and your green tea, et cetera, et cetera? It's like, so we always focus on behaviors with those people. We don't really talk too much about the numbers, because the numbers take care of themselves. If you execute all the behaviors, then everything takes care of itself. So pain's no different for me than the weight loss concept. Is like, I'm just not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the stuff that matters, that you do have control over, right? So that's how I look at that. If that is my expansion on that.
No, that does help.
Okay.
I made that mistake this year, so now I know how to.
We all do. I mean, and I'm not perfect. I screw up sometimes too, you know. But the thing about it is, it's like the regardless of the situation, no matter what we're talking about, the focus needs to be on the things that you do have a measure of control over. And it should be, we never really have to talk about the other stuff. It's a byproduct. It's like a goal. It's like, okay, a goal is an end. If you want to lose weight quickly, cut off a limb. Okay, and then people go, well, that'd be crazy. Well, yeah, it is crazy, but it does work, right? So that's not the goal. The goal is the behaviors. Right? The intent should be to focus on the behaviors. So that's what I try to do in the clinic.
I like that. Okay.
And if you get them to do something that they're already habitual, right, Dr. Mike?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just replace it with something good.
The secret sauce.
There you go.
I never thought of that with pain before. So basically, like we were talking with weight loss, I talk about it as action goals versus outcome goals.
Right.
So I never thought about it from a pain perspective, which is really clever.
Well, so for me, it's like they're all the same. It's like pain is just an output. It's a choice that the system makes, right? Based on all of the experiences, all of the context, all of the internal information that has to be processed, and then it makes a decision, and that is the output. And again, I literally think about all the potential influences that are inside of you every moment of every day. It's like, you're not controlling that. You might think you do, you know.
Well, I mean, I think it's just like weight loss. I think the conversation that I will always have with clients is when they'll say, like, how much weight can I lose? Like, I have no idea. Like, I know here's XYZ principles that we know work. let's see how your body responds to it, because you don't really know the backlog of, I don't know, metabolic distress or over caloric, you know, like you don't know all the other things that are in the background that you're
Well, there's
dealing
so
with.
many unknowns in every situation, right? Yeah, yeah. And all we have to do is respect that. It's like it doesn't mean that we're not going to make progress. It doesn't mean that we can't be successful. It just means that there's stuff that we're just not going to know. But that's why it's a process, and that's why we follow things over time. And people ask me, it's like, how long do you think it's going to take me to get rid of this? It's like, I have no idea. I said, if you broke a bone, it would be 6 to 8 weeks. We kind of know that one through experience over time, that most people will heal a bone in 6 to 8 weeks. But I'm making a point. It's like, okay, so if this is a learning-based adaptation that I have to teach you, right? How fast is it going to take you to learn how to do this and make it unconscious? It's like, I don't know how long that takes. What is the effort that you're willing to put forth? How many things are you doing that interfere with what we're trying to accomplish, right? So it's the runner that comes in with plantar fasciitis, and then they say, okay, how long is this going to take? And it's like, how long are you willing to stop running? And they go, well, okay, I usually do 120 miles a week or whatever. I don't know what a marathon runner runs these days, but they go, what if I only do 6? It's like they don't quite get it. They keep doing things that interfere with their behaviors. And so those are the things that have to slowly be taken away, because again, they're habitual just like everybody else is, or they don't want to give things up. When you have an actively plantar flexed first array, okay? When it's actively plantar flexed, you have a pelvis problem in the posterior aspect of the hip that is exactly the same as what's going on in the foot. So then you must have a really big orientation to have a straight leg raise on that side then.
I'll take a video if you don't mind and send it to you.
Or it's not an actively plantar flexed first ray. So again, is it like a really crazy straight leg raise? Is it an extreme at the other end?
He can get past 90.
Okay, so that would be kind of extreme. So that's an orientation. So then it's probably the passive position of the foot that's the result. Then you got somebody that is probably later in the propulsive phase.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, well, again, it's like if it's actively pressed down, you're going to have concentric orientation up above on the back side of the hip. If it's passive, it's because the pelvis has already passed over the foot, right? And so then you're going to have it's going to look more like a nutated sacrum. You're going to have like the posterior lower aspect of the sacrum will be tipped forward. Let me grab the pelvis for a second. You have to have a pelvis that does that to have the straight leg raise and the hip flexion, right? And so this would be representative of the ankle as well. So the ankle would be in this orientation. So now you have an eccentric orientation posteriorly at the ankle, okay, which would give you, again, you have a tibia that is forward over the foot, which will passively put the first ray into the ground.
So it's kind of keeping them from falling forward.
Correct. But again, yeah, so center of gravity is over the foot far enough that it's pressing the foot into the ground.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like the the really rigid supinated foot that looks like they just put their heel down on the ground. It's going to be somebody that's over top of it. And again, so you've got the orientation, you've probably got some nutation to the sacrum, and that's where I would go first anyway, to bring them back. Because if you can get their center of gravity backwards, then you've just alleviated all that the anterior concentric orientation. So you've got like a tibialis anterior that's pulling the knee forward over the foot, right? And then your posterior compartment's going to be eccentrically oriented. Hey, everybody, thanks for coming. This is a great call. This is fun. We were rolling the whole time. That was great. We'll do this again next week. So thanks again for coming. Enjoy your coffee. Have a great Thursday. Happy Thursday, Nikki. I'm going to go have some chips and salsa tonight, as usual. And we'll see you guys later.